Okay, so we already talked about the regular verbs in French and how they're conjugated. But there is a small part left, and that is the verbs that they end with re. So re. You can search up that online because it's really easy how those verbs are conjugated. And most of the times, the regular verbs that you see, they either end with ir or er. So I'm not gonna put a lot of time on that, but just to let you know, those regular verbs also exist. So if you are curious about them, it's really a good idea to go and do further research on them. And there are some tips that I want to give to you about the irregular verbs. So in the first video, I think I mentioned that the only way to get through all the irregular verbs is to memorize them and memorize how they are conjugated. But there are some tips that would help you to learn these conjugated formats and just make it easier for you. So what I would suggest is to make a list of all the irregular verbs and write down how each of them is conjugated. After that, take a look at the verbs, and then you will see that some of the verbs tend to follow the same rule and format. So there is not a generalized rule for them, but you would see that the 2 or 3 verbs, they are conjugated the same way. So it's really a good idea to have all those type of verbs together, and it would just help you to memorize them easier, and that's one of my tips. My second tip is to try to pronounce each of the conjugated formats for each of the pronouns while you're trying to write it, because most of the times you would see that there are some formats, and these formats sometimes it's hard to pronounce them. It's in a way that you're like, oh, it's maybe the same as the regular verbs, but they are different. And it's a good idea to know how to pronounce them. And because these verbs are irregular, you might be able to write them down when it's like on paper. If I give you that verb, you might be super good at writing the conjugated formats of it. However, when it comes to speaking, then you just can't use them as frequent and as fluent as you would use the regular verbs, because you have only practiced the way that they are written. So it's a really good idea to just pronounce them and try to use those irregular verbs in the correct format, because I have seen a lot of people using an irregular verb while they're speaking, and they tend to just make it to follow one of the regular formats, which is not correct. So it's a really good idea to just try to pronounce them, and I would suggest that. Actually, I think that helps a lot. And what else can I give you as a suggestion? I think memorizing these verbs on a regular basis would be really good. I think the best way is to try to start with like 5 verbs, master those 5 verbs, and then go to the next 5 verbs. And this is like how you can get through that. And then like you master first 5 verbs, then you add another 5 to that, and then you do a review of all 10 verbs. Then you move to next 5. Okay, so now you have 15, and you add on to that list. And I think that's the best way. But there are 2 irregular verbs that are super important in French language: être, avoir. So I'm just gonna review those 2 verbs and tell you how they're conjugated. Être, je suis, tu es, il, elle, singulier, et nous sommes, vous êtes, il, elle, sont. Okay, so how do we write them? Je suis, es, U-I-S. 2, E, I-S. Il, elle, singulier, E, I-S-T. Nous sommes, S-E-M-M-E-S. Vous êtes, E-T-E-S. So, this is a part that a lot of people tend to make mistakes because most of the times when you have vous, it ends with E-Z. But here, it's vous êtes and it's E-T-E-S. So make sure you remember that. And then il, elle, pluriel, sont. Okay, S-O-N-T. Let's talk about avoir. J'ai, tu as, il, elle, singulier, un. Nous avons, vous avez, il, elle, on. But because il, elle, pluriel, the pronouns end with S when you're pronouncing it. Actually, it's ils ont, elles ont. So you have that liaison entre S et E. Okay, great. One other mistake that a lot of times happens is ils ont, elles ont. That's for avoir. And ils sont, elles sont. That's for être. So make sure when you're pronouncing that, for the il, elle pluriel, you are using the correct pronunciation. Okay, Merry Christmas, everyone. Hope you enjoy your holidays as much as you can. And also don't forget to work on your French language. Bye! Happy holidays!